Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to pressure can chicken. Chicken is a low acid food, so you have to can it in a pressure canner. It is not safe to can chicken in a water bath canner. So I am using a Presto weighted pressure canner, and that comes with a few pieces that I'll go over with you now, and also all the other equipment that I'll be using. And then I'll just show you how to do it. It's super easy and the chicken lasts for years. Okay, so you first need your pressure canner, which consists of a base, a plate at the bottom to prevent burning, a lid, and you always need to inspect your lid and your ring. Make sure that they're all working right and that there's no cracks in your ring. And then your weights, make sure you have your weights. You want to make sure that you can see through this hole. So stick your eye through it, make sure you can see through it. That's where the steam escapes. And if the steam can't escape, your pressure canner could blow up. So it's really important to make sure that the steam can escape through the vent hole. And then you want to make sure that this pops up and down and moves freely, because that will cause it to come to pressure. And then mine is a weighted gauge pressure canner. And the reason I do that is because you really don't have to worry about it once it comes to pressure. You don't have to keep watching the dial or anything like that. So, and then you just want to make sure that you can put your lid on and everything comes together the way it's supposed to. There we go. There's arrows on the metal and on your pressure canner base that you put together. And then you pull the handles together to make sure that it's locked in place. Okay, so that's the pressure canner. The next thing that you're going to need is clean mason jars. You're going to need clean rims and clean new lids with the rubber seal in them. And that's it. That's all you really need. I do use a special jar lifter so that I don't burn my hands if I pull hard jars out. But with pressure canning, I actually just let the jars cool off in the pressure canner before I even open the lid. And that prevents water from seeping out of your jars. So you actually don't need that for this recipe. Okay, so today we're gonna be canning chicken breast. So I just grabbed the chicken breast at Walmart, and I'm going to be following the recipe in the Ball Complete Book of Home Canning with the raw pack method. So this is super simple. We're going to cut up our chicken, pack it into our jars, leave 1 inch headspace, clean our rim off with a little bit of vinegar on a washcloth. And then if there's space in there that needs to get filled with, so that we don't have any air bubbles, we can fill that in with water. Otherwise you can just pack it full of chicken. And then we will set our lids, put it in the pressure canner, and start the process. So there's a few important things about the pressure canner and it coming to pressure. We're gonna put it on the stove, turn it on, and then let it come to a boil inside, and you want the steam to vent through the vent hole for at least 10 minutes before you put your weighted gauge on top. So you want the steam to come out of this hole for 10 minutes before you put your weight on top. And then it can come to pressure, and this pressure gauge will pop up, and that's when it's coming to pressure. But you still don't set your timer yet. This has to start rocking back and forth like that. And then you set your timer, and these will process. That's what you set your timer for. They will process. Since I am doing pint jars, you are going to process your pint jars of chicken for 75 minutes. So once your pressure has come to pressure and your weighted gauge starts shaking, then you set your timer for 75 minutes. And then we will turn it off and just let it cool off and let the pressure release naturally on its own. I won't open it again until tomorrow morning. The first thing that I do when I'm canning chicken is trim off the fat. extra fat in the jar can actually prevent it from sealing correctly, and it just looks kind of gross in the jar. Canned chicken isn't very pretty, and it's even not prettier or uglier with the fat in the jar. So I trim the fat off, and then I am cutting my chicken breasts into about 1-inch chunks. You can do different size pieces if you like, but this is just what I'm doing for how I use my canned chicken. I am going to be using a couple different seasonings for the chicken this time. I already have a few jars of canned chicken that I did about 6 months ago, and this doesn't have any seasoning in it. I did not add any broth to this to fill it up because the chicken actually makes its own broth in the jar when it cooks. So you can see any broth in there is just from the chicken breast cooking. And this is really good for chicken salad, chicken enchiladas, chicken quesadillas, a very quick, easy meal. So this time I think I'm gonna do half of the chicken breast jars in the usual seasoning. This has lemon in it, salt, pepper, paprika, a little bit of cayenne pepper, rosemary. It's really delicious on chicken. And then the other half, I am going to use the taco seasoning from McCormick. This is just gonna be really good if I wanna do chicken enchiladas or chicken tacos, anything that has a Mexican or a Spanish flavor to it. So that's what I'm gonna do today. You don't have to do that, but if you wanna try it, then go for it. I'll let you know how it turns out. So I have only opened one jar as of this moment, and it was one with the usual seasoning. So it has the paprika, the rosemary, salt, pepper, a little bit of cayenne and lemon in it, and it is really delicious. It would be great on a chicken salad. The taco seasoning I am really looking forward to for chicken taco soup or chicken quesadillas or chicken enchiladas. It will be very good. So I highly recommend doing this if you're canning chicken. It is good to have some that aren't flavored, but it is also very nice to have some that are pre-flavored before you can them. So I just give those a good rub and mix the seasoning up a little bit. I probably used about a teaspoon of seasoning, maybe 2 teaspoons, on 3 chicken breasts each. I am going to be canning 6-pint jars. So what you do is you have your clean pint jars. They don't have to be sterilized. This chicken has salmonella on it right now. So if you have clean jars, you're good. Fill those evenly. You don't have to do it evenly. You can stuff them full of chicken till there's only 1 inch of headspace left and can it like that. But I want to get 6-pint jars, so I'm using about 1 chicken breast per jar. And then I will top off these jars with just some water and use a butter knife to poke out any air bubbles that might be in there and make sure it's just filled up to 1 inch headspace. And that will make sure that these jars seal correctly. Now, you don't have to use water. You could use chicken broth and that would be delicious, but this is just what I had on hand and what was super easy for me. And I'm sure it'd be super easy for you too, because most of us have water. And then after your jars are full and before you put the clean new lids on, take a washcloth with some white distilled vinegar on there and just clean the rims off really well. That makes sure that the rim is nice and clean and the rubber on your new lid can seal to it correctly. And this prevents jars from not sealing, which would be very sad after you put all that work into it. When you put your bands on, just tighten them to finger tight. You don't need to clench them down. In fact, that could probably cause problems. So just finger tight, screw those on, and then they are ready to go into your pressure canner. But before you put your jars into your pressure canner, you're going to fill it with 3 quarts of water, and that is for a 7-quart pressure canner. I'm just going through the second batch of seasoned chicken here and getting these into the jars really quick. Then I will do the exact same thing. I will fill them the rest of the way up with water, use a butter knife to poke out any air bubbles, clean the rims with a vinegar and a washcloth, place all my lids on, and then screw the bands onto finger tight. and load these into my pressure canner that has 3 quarts of water already in it. Before you put your jars into the pressure canner with the 3 quarts of water, add a couple tablespoons of white distilled vinegar to your canner to help keep your jars clean. Because I am only canning 6 pints of chicken today, I am not going to fully fill my pressure canner. So I am actually going to add 2 quarts to fill it up the rest of the way with water in them. And that will just make sure that it's full and the jars don't move around very much while they're canning. This isn't for directions from the Presto canner. You don't have to add the jars of water, but I like to do that. It makes me feel good. Now, what you don't see in this video is I did put lids on those jars of water and can them that way. You can just dump the water out. You don't have to use new lids for the water jars, but that just helps make sure that nothing's going to move around in there while it's processing. Then I lock the lid on, light my propane stove, and get the water boiling in your pressure canner. Once you'll see the steam coming out of the vent right there, let that steam for 10 minutes. After the steam has been venting for 10 minutes, then you can go ahead and add your weights. I am using 15 pounds of pressure today because I'm at a higher altitude, and just set that right on top. Now don't set your timer yet, because now we have to wait for this little button in front to pop up. You see it wiggling around right here, and it wiggled around for a little while before it popped up. When it does pop up, that means it has come to pressure, which is great, but still don't set your timer yet, because we have to wait for the weights on top to start doing a hula dance and jiggling back and forth. And once those are jiggling back and forth, then you can set your timer for 75 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes and process your chicken. And then when it's done, you just turn it off and let it cool off naturally all the way before you remove the lid. This is actually the next morning. I did this last night. So these have come down from pressure and cooled off naturally overnight. Just remove the lid and you can see what this looks like inside. I'm removing them with just my hand because everything is nice and cooled off. Get rid of those water jars, and then I can just remove all of my canned chicken by hand because it's nice and cool. I'm just giving you a close-up of what this looks like. You can see the broth inside the jar that the chicken made with that water and the seasoning. And then the lids come off super easy after they have sealed correctly in a pressure canner. So you can just take them off really easy, and you want to store them with the bands removed so you don't get a false seal and you know that your food is safe. All right, I'm gonna open up one of these jars and let you see what the chicken looks like inside and what you can expect. So I'll pop one of these open. I'm going to drain the broth into a bowl because it's good broth, and I am going to use it in another recipe. So I don't wanna waste that. And then I will empty the chicken onto this plate and give you guys a good look at the texture and what you can expect. And I will give it a taste. I hope that you found this video helpful and informative, and I hope you give it a try if you haven't tried pressure canning chicken or meat before. It's super simple, and it is actually very delicious on its own or in a meal. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I make a new video every week. We'll see you next time.